right.
Welcome back, guys.
We are back.
So sorry we missed last week. It's been hectic. You know, life happens. So we're back though. And as promised, we are on the topic of faith tonight.
Come on.
So we're actually going to be diving into the Bible for the first time. We're just going to be starting off in the Bible, and then we're going to be launching off from there. So if you've got a Bible, fantastic. Open it up to Genesis. If you don't have a Bible, pause it. Go find one. Look one up online. There's plenty of sources available.
There's an e-version as well.
Yeah, we call this the tree version. If you don't have a tree version yet, that's fine. You can work on that later.
Yeah.
You can use the e-version for now. But we're going to be starting off in Genesis, and it starts off technically in Genesis 11. That's all the way at the very beginning of the Bible. Genesis is the first book. And so it starts off, obviously, with the creation and Adam and Eve and all that. Once we get into Genesis, we are looking at the story of Abraham and of Sarah. And so there's the religions of Christianity, of Islam, of Judaism, and all of these are called Abrahamic religions. And it's because all of these three religions, and there's several others that believe in, but those are the major ones, in the God of Abraham. And so that's where this story starts off, is the story of Abraham. He's originally called Abram, and his wife is Sarai, not Sarah. Read it, you'll learn about that. But the story is I think, one of it's the epitome of faithfulness. It is the biblical story of faithfulness. Yeah. And I don't know about you, when I was growing up, I never made the connection between Abraham and sacrificing his son Isaac and Abraham and Sarah having children when they were 80. I didn't make the connection that it was the same person. Yeah, right, I didn't realize it was one story together. And so I don't know if that's anyone else or if I was just a dim child. I don't know. But, and so what happens is that Abraham and Sarah's 80. I don't know how old Abraham is at the time. I don't know if he's up there though. He's presumably older than her. Yeah. In fact, I think he's over 100. Anyways, beside the point. So what happens though is that Abraham is made the promise that him and Sarah will be given a son, and that from that son will arise multitudes, that God promises to make a nation of Abraham through his son Isaac. Right. And so Sarah is 80. It's a bit past due, right? She can't have kids now. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. And so what happens then is that God promises them this, and so even though they think this is insane, it's impossible, it can't happen, they believe in God and they have faith in God, and that God wouldn't promise them something that he can't fulfill, that he can't actually do. Right. And so even though they're skeptical, and that's the big discussion for tonight, that skepticism isn't bad, questioning isn't bad, there's nothing wrong with that. And if you read the book of Job, you'll see that again, Job questions God, and God says, you're right to question me, faith shouldn't be blind. And that's kind of one of the major topics for tonight.
Yeah, and I think that's important to distinguish too, is that even though Abraham and Sarah believed and had faith in God and what God was saying, they were still skeptical at that time. Even after God was like, I will give you a child, they were still like, nah.
Does he know about...
It's like one of those kind of like, I guess I'll believe it when I see it kind of. Yeah. They believed it, but there was still always that kind of like,
we'll see.
Yeah. You realize what you're telling me right now, Jesus. God.
Just it's been a few years since I was able to have children.
So I think it's important.
Does he know how old I am? Has he looked at the calendar?
It's important to distinguish that, like, while they had faith, there was also a level of skepticism. Yeah. In that,
and that's fine.
Time, so yeah,
and so, but they are faithful. They believe God will fulfill His promise, and He does. He gives them Isaac. Yeah. We're going to skip forward a little bit to another story that everyone knows. Then that at the time, and some backstory is required for this one. At the time, in this period of history, it was considered to be fairly common practice for people to sacrifice their children to God. To show their love and to show their devotion and to show their faithfulness to God. Mm-hmm. And so this was fairly common practice at the time. So when God tells Isaac, I want you to sacrifice your son, or Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your son Isaac, there's a lot going through Abraham's mind, obviously, because it's like, you promised me a nation through Isaac, which can't happen if he's dead.
Right.
And again, faith comes into the picture, right? Because I have to believe that God wouldn't promise me something he won't actually do. And I don't know how that can happen if Isaac is dead. But God said so. So we're going to trust him that he has a plan here. Yep. Okay? Maybe that's going to be resurrecting Isaac after I prove that I am faithful to God and that I'm willing to sacrifice my son and give up what God promised me in order to fulfill what God is promising me.
Right.
Right. And that doesn't end. So he goes ahead, and then God stops him at the last second. And this is when in the Bible it shows the shift from God in the Old Testament saying, that he wants sacrifices.
Right.
To saying, like, I want this to end. This doesn't please me. This doesn't make me happy. There's nothing about this that I support or enjoy. He says, no more child sacrifices. And so, still, it must have been a trippy day for Isaac. Dad takes you up on a mountain and starts to sacrifice. He was like, just kidding. But this whole story, though, is about God making promises and people not understanding them, but believing in God. Yep. And that's really what this story is about. And at the end, of course, this leads to the 12 tribes of Israel, right? And God does fulfill that promise. Right. But he wouldn't have and he couldn't have if Abraham hadn't been faithful and if Sarah hadn't been faithful.
True. Very true.
So that leads us to a big question that I think is very often misunderstood or misused is the word faith. What exactly does it mean?
Yeah. Faith, I stole this one from you, so I'll give you the credit on that. I figured I'd tackle the easy topic there. Faith, I'll go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, and then I've got a second one as well that'll just tie it in together. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 says, now faith, what we're talking about, is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see, right? So what that's telling me is that it's being confident in the things that I not only hope will happen through God's favor, but also what God is telling me will happen. And then the assurance for what I don't see. I may not see the workings of it, and I may not see how it's going to work, just like Abraham. Abraham was promised a nation to come from Isaac, but he didn't see it, but he trusted in that. And I think that's where Abraham's faith was so big, was the fact that even though Isaac was his son and his only son that he had at that point, his faith in God took him to the point that he was willing, if God told him to do that, even though he didn't see what it was. And then the second verse that I go to is Romans chapter 10, verse 17 says, consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. Right? So those both kind of tie in together. What I believe faith is for me is it's believing in God's promises, trusting in his faithfulness, and relying on God's character and faithfulness to act in my life. Yeah. It's believing in God's promises, believing what God says, believing what the word of God says, believing that the promises that I, in my relationship with God, the promises that I've been given, believing that those are going to happen no matter the circumstance, what I cannot see, right? Trusting that he's faithful, trusting that he's always going to be faithful to me. His word is always going to be faithful to me. We talk about it all the time. His word will never come back void. Right. So it's trusting in his faithfulness in that. And then basically having faith that God's character and what God says will come. Right. It may not come the way that I want it to come. It may not come the way that I think it should come. It may not come the way that I want it to, but the way that he wants it to ends up being better. Yeah. And it definitely what I can tell you about faith is having faith that God will move and God will work and God will change a situation or act in a situation to be faithful. If you put a timestamp on that, a lot of times he's gonna throw that timestamp out the window.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you want it in 6 months.
The Bible says, "Thou shalt not test thy
Hey,
Lord."
let me tell you, you're gonna ebb and flow through there.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, back to faith. That's just kind of my definition of what it is.
Yeah.
It's the faithfulness in God's word, and His character, and me believing that God will move in my life, and that God will move in my family's life, and that God will do the things that He has spoken to me to do in my life. So
I think it's worth addressing that I think very often the word faith and the idea of faith is very often misused or badly used.
For sure.
Because a lot of people, you'll hear well-meaning, well-intentioned Christians trying to discuss Christianity with someone who is trying to learn more. And they're wanting to know more about this Jesus guy. They want to learn about God. And they'll say, well, they'll ask a difficult question that someone doesn't know how to answer. And rather than saying, I don't know, or that's a great question, it's something I'd like to learn more about, a lot of people will say, well, that's where faith comes in. And like that's where faith enters the picture, as if that word is the be-all, end-all, blanket-all solution word to I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to address that faith isn't blind.
No. There's no such thing as having there's no such thing as having true blind faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if I used the analogy earlier, you're not going to believe something that I tell you purely because I tell you. Right. You will also have some level of doubt about it.
Well, that's a good point. I will, I can, but it depends on if I know your character.
That's true, exactly. Right? Yeah.
If I'm dealing with someone, let's not think about this in God terms, but in human terms. If someone tells me there's $1 million in gold bars behind my house and they're for you, it depends a lot who's telling me this information. Right. Is it my grandfather, who I've known for 50 years and he's dying now, and I know he's loaded?
Yeah.
I'm going to believe him, right? If it's a homeless guy, right?
Where the gold at?
Right? It depends entirely on the character of the person that's speaking and how well I know them. Yeah. And that's really what faith is. And that's the difference between blind faith and faith with evidence. And that all starts in the Bible. And it's the reason I always advocate getting a tree version. Spend time in this because it's a different experience than reading it digitally. But if you want to know what faith is, well, actually, first off, if we jump into Corinthians, it says that faith is actually a spiritual gift. It's given to us by the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And so it's something that anyone can have, but it is a gift from God. But you have to take it for yourself, I feel like. It's given to you, but you have to accept that gift. And the only way to really accept that and if you want to increase your faith, you want to believe, right? Because there's plenty of people, I've met so many people who call themselves atheists or agnostics, but they'll come and they'll ask questions, and I can tell and not that this applies to everyone. There are some people that just genuinely don't believe and don't have any interest in it, so I don't want to say they don't exist. But I've had a lot of people that I can tell like they want to believe, they want to have faith, but they're trying to work out God logically, and you can't. You can't work your way out logically to God.
Right.
But what you can do is read the Bible, right? Because if faith is having I don't want to use faith in the definition of faith. If faith is believing in the character of God and believing that the promises He makes will come true, then what I need to do is to look at His past character, what He's done in the past. I need to look at if He has been faithful in the past, if He has been trustworthy in the past, if He has been loyal in the past. And if you want to do that, you have to read the story of God. That's what the Bible is.
Yeah.
So I think you go back and you read the Bible and you see the promises He makes to people and the way that He fulfills them. And over the course of thousands of years, thousands of pages that it takes to tell that story, you'll learn who God is. And you can only find at the end of that story that God is faithful and He deserves our faithfulness.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not without evidence. There's a tremendous amount of evidence to support God's faithfulness.
Yeah, and I feel like so many times in talking to people, non-believers or people that are trying to logically put it into place, a lot of times it's they can read of God's faithfulness in the Bible, but when it comes to their life and what's happened, and I'll use Jesus and the miracles that Jesus performed through it. It's, Jesus healed this person and he healed this person, and then you have someone who is praying for healing for a family member, and then that family member doesn't get healed. That then a lot of times makes them question their faith in, can Jesus actually do this? We talked about it with you with your
my father dying.
Yeah, with everything is at the end of the day, I'm going to my faith in my God, I'm going to pray that I'm going to pray just as strong that God will miraculously move and miraculously heal, just as strong as I'm going to pray for my children. So I have the faith that he can do it. Just because I have the faith that he can do it, and I really, 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 really want him to do it, doesn't mean that he's going to.
Yeah, ultimately it's up to his plan.
Correct.
At the end of the day. It has to suit his plan.
And a lot of times that's where I know, like, new believers or people who are on the fence and trying to figure things out, that's where they get lost. And it is like, well, I wanted this, and I had faith that this was going to happen. I had faith that he was going to bring my family member. I had faith that these things were going to happen, and it falls short to them.
Well, Paul, when he's in prison, says some of the best words. All of Paul's words are amazing. He has all the best words.
All the best words. It's all the good verbiage.
But Paul says to live is Christ and to die is gain, right? Because if I live, I get to stay here and I get to continue spreading the gospel. I get to continue teaching people about Christ. And the more people I can reach, which is why we're doing this channel, the more people we can save, which was God's great commission, Jesus Christ's great commission, right? To go and make nations of all men. It's the whole purpose of our existence is to be there for one another, to help one another to find salvation through Christ. And so if he's in prison and he thinks he's going to be executed. If I survive, if God saves me, because God didn't promise to save him, he believes God will save him because he believes that he's doing God's work, right? If God saves me, I get to continue to serve God on earth. And if I die, I get to be with God. It's a win-win situation.
It is.
And so, when my father passed, we believed that he was going to be healed. We believed that he had a lot of work left to do. He was a great man. He was teaching people about God. And we believed that God had great plans for him. And we were right. But they were greater than our plans. Our plans were selfish. Our plans, we wanted him to stay with us. But I know that now he's with God, right? Which is a part of God's plan, which I can't understand until I die and I get to be one with God and my Father again, and I'll see God's plan and it will make sense to me. And that's faith.
That's faith. Exactly. And I think when you, like you said about with Paul saying to die is gain, I feel like there's so many examples that we are just being selfish in our hope and our hope and faith for that to happen. Again, like your father, we're kind of in that same similar realm with another man from the church right now, and he's ready. He's ready. I know my God. I love my God. I love my relationship with my God. I'm ready if this is it. And it's comforting, but it's hard at the same time because you want to be selfish in that.
It's hard for you.
Exactly.
You're happy for him.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of times when we look at it and we say, well, God didn't heal this person in this area, or God didn't do this in this area, and it hurts us, that's us being selfish. Because we're not seeing the gain that comes on the outside of that. And we like you said, we will never see that until we get there and we get to go, hey, I got a question about I have a question about this. I mean, because I'm going to do the same thing. Yeah. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to be like, hey, listen, is Cooper here? He ain't made it yet. All right, can me, you, and Mr. Terry sit down real quick? I got some questions. I should figure it out. So I feel like it's so good that you say that, because a lot of times we do look at it selfishly, and that's.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it.
It's fine to love people and not want them to die.
It's a test of our faith, and that's where when you kind of look back at it again, you're like, his plan was fulfilled. Yeah. God's plan was fulfilled in that. So
I don't necessarily have to like it.
Right. I don't have to like it. So.
But yeah, absolutely. And so it's faith is a really interesting topic. I think it's very often misdefined or misunderstood. Because it's both very simple and it's also perhaps the most complicated part about our belief system.
Yeah, and we could sit here for hours and continue to dive into faith and what faith looks like and what is faith, what's not faith, and we could just continue to go on and on, because it's such a wide topic that people are going to look at it and they're going to say, well, I have questions about this, and I have questions about this, and it would just, like I said, we'll probably end up coming back to it at some point.
I'm sure. I'm sure every video we make is going to touch on it.
Yeah,
faith is so
right.
Everything has to do with faith.
But it's, at the end of the day, it's the core of Christianity. It's the core of your Christian faith. It's the core of what it means to follow Jesus. So.
So a few things wrapping this up. One is that it would be awesome if you all could comment below the video. Not that we are out of things to talk about, obviously, because we're just getting started. But we did want to give you all the opportunity to give us some ideas. What are some questions that you have, things that you want to talk about with us? Questions, comments, rude remarks, whatever.
Doesn't have to be generic.
Like major topics, biblical topics, such as like we've been talking about. We've went through different things like going through anxieties, things that people that real life situations that you're dealing with, and how your faith and how the Bible and how everything can kind of work together in that. To what does the Bible say about how to deal with anxiety,
to get you through it,
right? So, depression, things like that.
Comment down below. Give us some ideas on what you want to talk about. We want to give you guys the content that you want. We want to give you guys relevant things to your lives. We got some other ideas of some things that'll be coming through, just to pump some different content out to you guys and stuff like that. So like, comment, subscribe, thumbs up.
I'm actually gonna kind of give them a header on what's going to be going on here fairly soon. One of the things we're going to be rolling out is more frequent content. Justin and I are going to be coming to you on Sundays. That's not going to change. But being that this is supposed to be a channel for new believers, and specifically because we work with youth, we're trying to get some youth involved in the channel as well. And so it's our intention to actually go through the Bible with you all, starting in the New Testament, just going Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and each day reading a chapter and talking about it with you in a shorter format, because we see the statistics on the videos, and we know that our 25-minute format, whatever we're at now, is taxing. A lot of people make it through. I think the average is like 5 or 6 minutes of the video, so we're going to try to keep that in a shorter format of like maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and do that 3 times a week is the plan.
Good for 5 minutes anyway, so that makes sense.
So look for that to be coming out here pretty soon. And then we've actually got a Discord we've set up as well. I'll post that in the link below. Right now it's just Lee and I. Do you have Discord?
I do not currently have it, but I will get it.
Anyways, it will be a way for you to actually message us individually as well. So that'll be a place where people can jump in there and chat. There's going to be like prayer request channels so that people can jump in there and pray with you. There's going to be, eventually we're going to have a bot in there playing like worship music, so you can go in there if you just want to listen to worship music. So it's a lot of stuff going to be going on here fairly soon. We're really excited about that. What did we decide the next video is on? I forget.
Stay tuned.
Okay. I think we were going to be discussing what it means to be Christian.
Yeah, like around that.
Something like that. Christianity, how it's like other major religions and how it's different. So, love you guys.
Tune in next week.
See you next week.